This video is sponsored by CuriosityStream. Get access to Nebula, a video streaming service made by your favorite educational creators when you sign up for CuriosityStream using the link in the description. This is a torii gate, one of the most recognizable symbols of Japan, alongside the cherry blossom and this electric mouse. Torii are also a sacred gateway in Shintoism, the indigenous religious practice of Japan. Even with an over 2,000-year history, Shinto has never been easy to define. The word Shinto wasn't even used much until the 17th century. But Shinto has its own shrines, priests, gods and rituals, everything you'd expect from a religion. But today, while over 80% of Japanese people participate in Shinto practices, only 3 to 4% identify themselves as believers in Shinto. And many Japanese people practice Shinto alongside Buddhism without any sense of contradiction. So, what is Shinto? Why are sumo wrestlers so salty? And what can the god of hair do for you? Well, let's find out. In the beginning, there was nothing but formless chaos. Over eons, the lighter particles of this chaos rose and became heaven, and the heavier ones fell and formed the earth, which was then a muddy ocean. Between these realms, 3 heavenly beings, or kami, formed. They were followed by 7 more generations of kami. The 7th generation of these kami were a man and woman pair known as Izanagi and Izanami, who descended down to give form to the earth. Izanagi and Izanami took a heavenly spear and stirred up the ocean below, which created an island, the first land. Izanagi and Izanami decided to live on this island and very soon felt the need to have children. So they got down to making babies the good old fashioned way, by erecting a large ceremonial pillar and performing a marriage ritual by walking around the pillar in opposite directions, and when they met on the other side, Izanami greeted Izanagi first, which resulted in the birth of a boneless and limbless child, who they then very quickly put on a boat and pushed off into the sea. But don't worry, he turns out mostly fine. He grows some bones, he becomes the kami of good luck and fisherman, and even has his own brand of beer now. They decided to give the ritual another go, with Izanagi speaking first, and from this union the islands of Japan were born, along with more kami such as the kami of wind, the kami of mountains and the kami of grass. Finally, Izanami gave birth to the god of fire and died, because, well, she had just given birth to a baby made of fire. Izanagi, in his grief, killed the baby, cutting it up into pieces, which then became the volcanoes of Japan, and some other kami like the dragon Watatsumi and the storm god and first sumo wrestler Takemekiruchi. Also at this point there was some human waste kinda just lying around, and from that some more kami were born, like the adorable clay kami couple Hanayasuhiko and Hanayasuhime. And obviously sad and lonely Izanagi wanted to see Izanami again, and so he descended to Yomi, the gloomy, polluted underworld. He found Izanami down there, and when he shone a light on her, he saw that his wife was a decaying, rotten corpse. Izanagi bolted, which enraged Izanami, who sent an army of demons after him. But as he escaped the underworld, he sealed the door with a giant boulder, protecting the living world from the world of death. The obviously furious Izanami cursed him and promised to kill 1,000 people a day in revenge. Izanagi promised to make sure that 1,500 people were born every day. Izanagi, covered in the pollution from the underworld, wanted to purify himself, so he found a river to perform misoyi, or purification. As he washed, kami were born from the clothes he took off, and from each part of his body that he washed. Finally, he washed his face. When he did this, he created the most important kami, called the 3 precious children. From washing his left eye came Amaterasu Omikami, kami of the sun. From washing his right eye came Tsukuyomi no Mikoto, kami of the moon. And from washing his nose came Sano no Mikoto, kami of storms. This is a simplified version of the Japanese creation story as told in the oldest surviving texts of Japanese history and myth, the Kojiki and the Nihonsuki, written in the 8th century. This story introduces us to some of the most important aspects of Shinto, such as kami and purification. We don't know much about Shinto's origins because Shinto has no founders like the Buddha, no prophets like Muhammad, or holy books like the Bible to tell us how it started. but archaeological evidence suggests that practices which could be called Shinto, like the worship of nature spirits in sacred spaces, first appear in Japan in the Yayoi period around 300 BCE to 300 CE. The word Shinto comes from these two Chinese characters. Shin, which means god or spirit, the native Japanese word for which is kami, and this character, Do, which means way. This Do or way is the same as the one in Taoism and tells us a lot about Shinto. It's a way of life, a practice, more concerned with rituals and community than with belief, faith, or moral codes. Literally, Shinto is the way of the gods, or in Japanese, the way of the kami. But what exactly is a kami? Kami. To put it simply, Shinto is the worship of kami. The typical translation of kami into English is god or deity, but that's not a great translation. Kami can be spirits of the landscape, forces of nature, and the spirits of dead ancestors. Anything in this world that fills you with a sense of wonder or awe can be a kami. It isn't difficult to see how the ancient Japanese, living in a wondrous world of massive live volcanoes, surging rivers, powerful waterfalls, and vast forests, felt that they lived in a world that was fully alive and aware and inhabited by kami. In Shinto, the physical world itself is sacred, worthy of respect, and you can have a relationship with it. So kami can be godlike, such as the sun goddess Amaterasu, but the concept also extends to other natural phenomena like mountains, rains, foxes, and earthquakes. Smallpox has a kami, and so does fertility, and growth, and rice, and even hair has its own humble kami. In Shinto, there is no one all-powerful god, and instead the universe is watched over by the harmonious cooperation of the kami who live in this world alongside humans, and generally want them to be happy and prosperous. It's a cycle of reciprocity. Humans respect the kami, and the kami take care of the humans. Kamis are expressions of musubi, which is the creative energy of the universe, and also a kind of spam-based sushi. But the spiritual, non-spam-based musubi literally means to unite. It ties everyone and everything in the universe together, and so everything is interconnected. The landscape, nature, the kami, humans, all of them are considered to be always growing in the process of creation. Kami are not all-powerful or all-knowing, and are invisible and immaterial, but they can live inside certain objects in shrines. Kami can also have personalities. They can be beneficial or malevolent, and you can interact with them. This communication comes in the form of prayer and offering sacrifices such as food. The Japanese worship of kami is a way to maintain a sacred relationship with their surroundings. While some kami like Inari, the kami of rice, are worshipped across Japan, many kami are deeply local, like the kami of a specific village, family, or waterfall, like the kami of Nachi Falls. A single individual tree might even have a kami. For example, when the Kayashima railway station needed to expand, locals protested against the chopping down of this tree because it housed a kami, and so the station had to be built around it. Failing to perform the correct rituals or disrespecting kami can lead to punishment called shinbatsu, usually in the form of illness. Most kami are good, but some kami, like the Magatsuhi no kami, the kami of disaster, are essentially destructive and cause misfortune. But luckily, Naobi no kami, the kami of undisaster, is tasked with cleaning up after Magatsuhi no kami's destruction. There are also the yokai, weird and wonderful, mischievous monsters that pop up in Japanese mythology. These can range from terrifying, soul-devouring demons down to the tofu kozu, a baby with a massive head that follows you around, constantly offering you tofu. There are said to be 8 million kami, which is just the Japanese way of saying an uncountable amount. Certain important humans can be considered kami both before and after death, like Tenjin, a 10th century scholar who was so smart that he became the kami of academics after dying, and who worried students will pray to for luck in passing exams. Or like the Emperor of Japan, who from the Meiji period was considered a living kami until renouncing his divinity after Japan's surrender in the Second World War. Purity. If anything can be called the central ritual of Shinto, it is purification. Referred to in general as harai, the purpose of purification is to remove spiritual pollution, which is called tsumi or kegare. This pollution is anything that separates someone from the creative musubi nature of all kami. Kegare polluters include things like death, disease, filth, and blood, while tsumi involves actions like crime, murder, disrespecting your parents, and not smickety smashing the lickety like button. Pollution is only temporary in Shinto, and humans are not considered naturally impure, so it's not like sin in other religions. Shinto doesn't actually preach you any ethics, and it has no reward-based heaven or punishment-based hell. In Shinto, nature is inherently good, and impurity is an abnormality that can be cleansed with a ritual. Impurity must be removed before interacting with a kami in rituals or prayer. That's why at the entrance of almost all Shinto shrines, you'll see a tank of water with wooden ladles. People use this to perform a form of harai called timizu. You wash your left hand, then your right hand, and then you pour water into your hand and use that to rinse out your mouth. Don't drink from the ladle, and for the love of Amaterasu, don't spit the water back into the basin. Spit it on the floor. More extreme versions of harai are called misoyi. Misoyi includes bathing in the ocean or even standing under a waterfall. Harai can also be performed with salt. In that case, it's called shubatsu. You can see this purification happen at the beginning of a sumo match, when the salt is spread around the ring to keep out impurity. One other form of purification ritual involves waving a wand or a harigushi over the thing being purified, like a person or even a new car, or over a plot of land before construction begins to purify it and bring good fortune. Shrines. The most recognizable aspect of Shinto is the shrines. There are over 100,000 shrines in Japan today, from the Grand Shrine at Ise, where the Sun Kami Amaterasu Omikami is worshipped as the ancestor of the imperial family, to the humble Mikami Jinja in Kyoto, the only shrine for the worship of Kamikami, the kami of hair. At this shrine, you'll hear the prayers of those wishing to be cured from baldness. This hair kami was actually a man once called Masayuki Fujiwara, who was apparently such a spectacular hairdresser that he became the kami of hair after his death. A shrine can be any place where a kami lives and interacts with humans. So shrines can be architectural masterpieces like the Grand Shrine at Ise, or simple roadside shrines, forest shrines, or household shrines. Kami aren't bound to just one shrine and can be enshrined in a number of different places. At the heart of a Shinto shrine is the Go Shintai, an object that a kami lives in but is not the kami itself. It's typically a ritual object like mirrors, swords, and jewels, although one Go Shintai at a shrine in Yokohama is an industrial robot. They can also be trees, rocks, or even a mountain, like Mount Miwa, which is the Go Shintai for the rain kami Onononushi. Shinto shrines are taken care of by Shinto priests known as kanushi, and the shrines are typically surrounded by forests, parks, or mountains, which today provide large green spaces in modern Japanese cities. The most important building inside of a shrine is the honden or main hall, which contains the Go Shintai and is closed to the public. In front of the honden is the haiden, or hall of worship, where the public can worship and participate in rituals. A shrine also generally has torii gates, marking the entrance between the sacred area of the shrine and the secular outside world. You bow before a torii gate before entering to show respect to the kami. The most famous torii are the numerous torii gates at the Fushime Inari Taisha, the main shrine of the rice kami Inari. Now, you only have to bow at the first torii gate because otherwise you would just never get to the shrine. A shrine may be missing any of these features though. For example, Omiwa Jinja at Mount Miwa has no honden, since the mountain itself is the Go Shintai. This is the most ancient form of shrine, built to worship the natural world itself. At a shrine, you may see a rock or tree, or even the shrine itself, surrounded by a ritual rope called the shimenawa. The shimenawa encircles sacred space, keeps it pure, and wards off evil spirits. A shimenawa is worn by sumo wrestlers of the highest rank, as they are considered to be a yorishiro, a vessel capable of housing a kami and becoming a Go Shintai. Shinto shrines are all accepting, and so anyone can visit. When visiting a shrine, you first walk through a torii gate, you then proceed to the kyosubachi to do the temizu purification of the hands and mouth. To worship the kami, you throw a coin, usually a 5 yen coin, into the offering box. Then you bow twice, then you clap twice, then you say your prayer, followed by another bow to thank the kami. After your prayer, you can purchase an amulet or a charm for good luck, or even an omikuji, a piece of paper that is kind of like a fortune lottery that contains good or bad fortunes concerning things like health, business, and marriage. You'll see leftover ones hanging from trees at shrines, as people will leave behind omikuji with bad predictions as a way to leave that fortune in the hands of the kami. Festivals. Shrines are also the center of matsuri, or festivals. At matsuri, you might see purifications, prayers, and food offerings called shinzen, and cheerful community activities like the makoshi, where the kami is literally carried around the community, sometimes even being carried into the ocean as an act of purification. You might also see contests like sumo, horse archery, and traditional performances like the kagura dance or no theater. One large matsuri is the Hatsumode, the first visit to a Shinto shrine or Buddhist shrine on Japanese New Year, typically between the 1st and 3rd of January. It is estimated that up to 80% of Japanese people take part in this festival. Some people even travel through the night in order to be at the shrine as New Year begins, or to view the sunrise from a mountaintop shrine. Festival goers enjoy the trip with family, friends, they eat seasonal foods, drink sake, and return old amulets for ritual burning and buy new amulets for the new year. A much smaller but equally interesting festival is the Nakisumo, or Korean Sumo Festival, held in May, where two enormous sumo wrestlers rock tiny babies in their arms, the winner being the one whose baby cries first. The babies then receive blessings for good health and fortune. For most of its history, Japan has been an archipelago of belief, with heavy influence from across East Asia. One of the largest impacts of Chinese influence was the introduction of Buddhism to Japan around the 6th century CE. Buddhism and Shinto essentially fused together over the 1,000 years after Buddhism entered Japan, in a process called Shimbutsu Shugo. Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples were normally built alongside each other. Kami were taken up into the Buddhist worldview, and Buddhas were considered to be kami. This mixture of Japanese belief and general East Asian beliefs can be seen in this statement from the Edo period. It is each man's duty to believe in the kami, the Buddha, and the teachings of Confucius. For the majority of its history, Shinto was not an organized religion, but was instead the folk religion of Japan that was practiced with great diversity across the islands, alongside Buddhism and other beliefs. Starting in the 17th century, some thinkers began to want to go back to a hypothetical pure Japanese culture. They referred to this study of Japaneseness as kokugaku, or national studies. The Kokugaku scholars wanted to try and remove all non-Japanese influence from Japanese culture. In the mid-19th century, the Emperor Meiji took control of Japan, and Meiji wanted to create a modern nation-state with all the fancy things Western nations were doing at the time, like nationalism and colonial empires. He liked the ideas of the Kokugaku scholars and wanted to create a culturally united and pure Japanese Japan. Shinto would become a nationalistic tool. Up until this period, Shinto wasn't really understood as a religion. The word Shinto kind of just meant Japanese religious practice that wasn't Buddhist. These nationalistic reforms banned all combinations of Buddhist temples and Shinto shrines. Meiji also created the Shrine Bureau, which nationalized the hundreds of thousands of community-managed shrines and brought them under the control of the state. Shinto practice was then directed towards the worship of the imperial family, who were seen as the divine descendants of the sun goddess Amaterasu, and the emperor was worshipped as a living kami. This state Shinto became the belief system in Japan during the first half of the 20th century, and became a key aspect of the nationalist and imperialist direction that Japan went in before and during the Second World War, and so remains controversial up until today. After the war, the emperor was forced to renounce his divine nature, that he was not a living kami, which he kind of did. It's complicated. Another part of this was to sever the connection between the state and the shrines. Shinto was formerly separated from the state and from state funding, and now the non-governmental Association of Shinto Shrines oversees Shinto shrines. That was very difficult to say. That was a lot of S's in a very short space of time. Today, over 80% of Japanese people participate in Shinto rituals, but still the majority say that they don't belong to any religion. The common saying within the religious landscape of Japan is Shinto weddings, Buddhist funerals. Even after Meiji's attempt to separate them, Buddhism and Shinto in Japan remain intertwined in everyday life. Except in the case of priests, most Japanese people practice both Shinto and Buddhism. Shinto rituals tend to be centered around this world and life events, and finding ways to respectfully live with the kami and other human beings. People go to a Shinto shrine after the birth of a child, or at a wedding, or for success in studies and business. Over time, Buddhism has taken over the afterlife aspect of religion, and today funerals and memorials are generally Buddhist. Japanese people easily combine Shinto and Buddhism in their daily lives. Shinto is still a practice that offers a way for people to connect with the environment around them and perform respectful rituals towards nature, family, and their community. Shinto continues to pop up across Japanese culture, from respect for dead ancestors, to Pokemon, to Studio Ghibli films, and to the nation's unique relationship with nature. In Japan, Shinto continues to be more than a religion. It's a way of life, a part of the country and its people. There's just something gorgeous about the landscape of Japan that brings about a sense of wonder and awe. Something that really hit me when I was watching Hidden Japan over on CuriosityStream. It has beautiful shots of the Japanese landscape, people, and these monkeys who are just chilling in a hot tub. It's adorable. What more could you want? Doesn't matter, we're gonna give you more anyway, because Cogito and a bunch of our creator friends got together and made their own platform called Nebula, which is partnered with CuriosityStream. Nebula is a place where you can watch some of the best educational content ad-free, uncensored, and earlier than YouTube. This video was up on Nebula before it was on YouTube. Over there, creators can experiment with exclusive Nebula original content, and lots of videos you've seen on YouTube have extended cuts up on Nebula. This channel has exclusive content on Nebula, and by supporting Nebula, you'll be providing a budget for creators to put together Nebula originals that could never make it on YouTube. Take for example Kento Bento's exclusive animated Nebula original on the most insane airplane hijacking in Japanese history, or Neo's beautiful Nebula original, The Unknown City. There are many more Nebula originals and podcasts, all funded by and created for people like you, people that enjoy original, independent, and smart content. And now we've teamed up with CuriosityStream, the best place to find world-class documentaries online. We've created a deal where if you follow the link in the description, you'll get access not only to CuriosityStream, but to Nebula too, for free. And that's not a trial or anything like that. As long as you're a CuriosityStream member, you'll get Nebula. And right now, for a limited time, CuriosityStream is offering Cogito viewers 26% off their annual subscription. That's less than $15 a year for both CuriosityStream and Nebula. So, click the link below to get 26% off an annual CuriosityStream subscription along with free access to Nebula, or you can just go to curiositystream.com/cogito. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. What religion would you like us to cover next? You can find all the sources used in the description. If you have any interest in supporting the channel, there are links to our Patreon and t-shirt store also in the description. My patrons also get access to these videos early along with extended commentaries from the Cogito team. Thank you so much for watching and sayonara!